My sister screamed, "This is what you get for acting like you're better," then smashed my wedding cake. When my mom hugged her and called it just emotions, I made sure she would never let emotions take over her again. It's wild how one moment can rewrite every single memory you thought was solid. August 3rd was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. 43 guests, soft jazz in the background, the venue lit just right. My fiancée Emily looked like someone who'd walked straight out of a dream. I'd worked my ass off for years. Consulting gigs, long flights, sleeping on airport benches, getting underpaid just to stay in the game. I finally made something of myself. I thought for once I was allowed to celebrate that. Bethany didn't see it that way. She came late. That should have been my first clue. The ceremony was already over. She breezed in wearing a gold backless dress like it was prom night. Didn't say hi, didn't smile, took a glass of champagne and found a corner. I caught her eye once and she looked through me like I was someone she didn't know. To anyone else, it might have looked like she was just being moody, but I knew Bethany. That silence was the prelude. 3 weeks earlier, she'd called me crying about her car breaking down again. She'd already borrowed $1,200 from me in April for repairs. This time she said she needed a whole new one, said it was urgent. I told her no, not because I didn't have the money, but because I was tired of always being her plan B. And honestly, she wasn't even trying anymore. Skipping classes, partying with people twice her age, telling our parents she was finding herself. She hung up without saying goodbye. I didn't think she'd carry it into my wedding. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I always did. She waited until the toast. Right when I stood up to thank everyone for coming, talk about love, about building a life with someone who brings you peace. Bethany stood too. For a second, I thought she was going to make a toast herself. My glass was still halfway to my mouth. Then she threw it. The champagne flew in a perfect arc and exploded against the dessert table. It shattered a photo frame of me and Emily smiling on a cliffside in Maui. Then she grabbed the wedding cake and shoved it like she was flipping a table. The cake didn't just fall, it collapsed. 3 layers, delicate sugar work, custom flowers, all of it smeared across the floor. She looked me dead in the eye and screamed it loud enough for people outside the venue to hear. "This is what you get for acting like you're better." It was so quiet afterward that I could hear someone's phone buzzing. A few guests looked around, hoping maybe this was some stage moment or an elaborate prank. It wasn't. My mom ran to Bethany like she'd just been assaulted. "She just needs to let it out," she said, holding her like she was a war victim. Emily's parents stared at me in disbelief. My best man didn't move. Even the DJ stopped the music. No apology, no remorse. Bethany didn't even cry. She just walked out like she'd proved something. I didn't say a word. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I knew this wasn't the place to say it. I wasn't going to let her turn my wedding into her courtroom. I smiled, said a few soft words to Emily, and nodded to the coordinator. The rest of the night limped along. Some people danced, some tried to pretend it hadn't happened, but there was no real recovery. The memory was already stamped. At home that night, Emily was quiet. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine. I wasn't, but I was focused. While she changed out of her gown, I opened my laptop. I logged into the university portal and revoked the tuition deposit I had made for Bethany last month. $9,400 gone. Then I went into the online rental portal for the apartment lease I co-signed. Locked the account, marked it for review. No approval, no rent payment. Lease agreement now frozen, rent due in 5 days. At exactly 8:40 the next morning, Bethany called me. I didn't answer. She followed with 3 texts. "What the hell? Why is the portal locked? I can't access anything. Did you do this?" I didn't reply because that morning wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. By the time Bethany sent her 6th text, she dropped the passive confusion. The last one just said, "Fix this." I muted my phone and made coffee. I didn't tell Emily right away, not because I was hiding it. She would have supported it anyway, but because I wanted a minute to enjoy the silence. The wedding was over. The chaos had passed, and for the first time in years, I'd stopped being Bethany's safety net. Around noon, my mom called. I let it ring out. Then she left a voicemail. "Your sister's very upset. She feels abandoned. Call me." The irony. She wasn't abandoned when I co-signed the lease or when I paid her deposit or when I covered her overdraft fees, bailed her out of a botched Airbnb situation, sent her $500 just until Friday, which turned into radio silence for 4 weeks. No one called me then to ask how I felt. Bethany didn't talk to me for 2 days after the wedding. Then she showed up outside my apartment. Emily saw her through the peephole and didn't open the door. She banged for about 10 minutes, loud, rhythmic, like a kid trying to start a fight. Emily finally cracked the door open, asked her what she wanted. Bethany didn't even say hi, just launched straight into demands. She said she had 5 days to pay rent and she'd already blown through her summer job money, that she was banking on the tuition deposit, that I had no right, that I had a moral obligation to follow through. Emily told her I wasn't home. That was a lie. I was in the living room, but I wasn't interested in speaking through a door. Not until she showed some kind of remorse, which she didn't. She left shouting something about legal rights, about how I couldn't just yank everything without warning. But she was wrong. I checked the lease. I was the primary on the account. She was the resident. She had no power over it. Not legally. I could pull the plug, and I had. 3 more days went by. She sent me an email with the subject line, "Are you seriously doing this?" Inside, she laid out a full breakdown of her upcoming expenses. She wanted me to reinstate the tuition. She said if I didn't, she'd have to drop out for the semester. That if she got evicted, it would be on me. Then she tried to guilt trip me. She said she ruined the wedding because she was overwhelmed and that I should have understood that I was the only person in the family with real money and that I was letting it go to my head. I didn't answer. I forwarded the email to Emily with a note, "Your turn to read the circus." That's when Bethany escalated. She showed up again. This time, she waited until Emily got home from work and tried to slip in through the door behind her. Emily didn't scream. She grabbed Bethany by the arm, dragged her into the hallway, and told her if she ever tried that again, she'd call the police. Then, without warning, Emily grabbed a fistful of Bethany's hair and shoved her down the hall. No drama, just raw, clean force. Bethany shrieked and stumbled, but Emily didn't even flinch. She shut the door and locked it like she'd taken out the trash. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up again. This time it was my dad. He started the call with a sigh. He said, "Look, we need to talk about your sister." I asked him what exactly he wanted to talk about. He said she was spiraling and that I needed to help her land. That what she did at the wedding was just emotions and I shouldn't take it personally. That I was old enough now to be the bigger person. I told him I'd already done that for years. He told me not to punish her for a bad moment. I told him it wasn't a moment, it was a pattern. I hung up when he started talking about family unity because at that point I knew something neither of them had admitted yet. Bethany wasn't spiraling. She was just finally falling. After Emily threw Bethany out, we didn't talk about it right away. It wasn't awkward. We were just quiet. I poured her a glass of wine and we sat on the couch like nothing had happened, but I could feel something shift between us. Not in a bad way. More like settled. Like Emily had drawn a line in permanent ink and neither of us had to guess where she stood. Bethany didn't come back the next day, but she didn't disappear either. She started sending Emily texts. "Not me, Emily." Apologies wrapped in guilt trips, little paragraphs pretending to be mature, but always ending with some variation of "he owes me." Emily ignored everyone. Blocked her number after the 4th message. Then Bethany switched tactics. She texted her mom and dad saying she was being physically attacked and treated like a stray dog by Emily. She made it sound like she'd shown up to reconcile and Emily had ambushed her. That's when the group chat happened. My dad added me, Emily, my mom, and Bethany into one chaotic vortex and typed out, "Let's have an honest talk without yelling or blocking. We are still a family." Bethany chimed in first, said she was hurt, said she acted out at the wedding because she felt invisible. She wanted someone to acknowledge how forgotten she felt. She claimed I'd been rubbing success in her face for years. Then my mom joined in, told me it was time to move forward and forgive her while she's still finding herself. She ended her message with, "She's still your baby sister." Emily left the group chat. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I replied with exactly 3 sentences. "She's not a baby. She's 22 and she needs to learn the cost of disrespect." Silence after that. No one replied. No typing bubbles. Just that weird, quiet digital tension that feels louder than shouting. 2 days later, I heard through my cousin that Bethany had packed up and left her apartment. Couldn't pay rent. Couldn't find a subletter. The lease company contacted me for final paperwork. I didn't fight it. I signed it all off, made sure my credit was safe, and moved on. But the real kicker came a week later. Bethany enrolled back in school, not under my name, under my parents'. Turns out they paid the tuition themselves. After all the complaining about money, after all the guilt about how we don't have the same opportunities as you, they just pulled out the card and paid it quietly. No announcement, no apology, just did it like it had been an option all along. So they had the money. They just didn't want to spend it on her when they could pressure me too. I was done. I wasn't angry. I just felt clear. Emily and I sat on the balcony that night drinking cheap wine and eating leftovers, and I told her I felt like a decade-long weight had been cut loose. She smiled and said, "Good, now we can live." And that was the first night I truly believed her. About a week after Bethany officially left her apartment, things went quiet. No more angry texts, no surprise visits. For the first time in a long time, it felt like the storm had passed. Then my mom called. No, hi, no. How are you? Just, you'll be at your father's birthday next Saturday, right? Like nothing had happened. Like my wedding hadn't been hijacked. Like my sister hadn't caused the scene that people were still talking about. I said I wasn't sure. She paused, then said, Bethany will be there. I want you two to talk like adults, and I want you to stop being so cold. That part hit weird. I was the cold one, not the one who trashed a wedding cake and screamed in front of a crowd, not the one who'd been living off me for the past 3 years, but the one who finally said enough. That's who they were mad at. I hung up without agreeing to anything. That night, Emily and I made dinner and didn't even bring it up until we were halfway through eating. She said we shouldn't go. I agreed. Then Friday night, the day before the party, something even more ridiculous happened. Bethany sent me a Venmo request for $1,800. Label for the cake and broken frame. LOL, let's just call it even. I didn't even react at first. I just handed my phone to Emily and walked out to the balcony. When I came back in, she had the calmest look on her face. I asked her what she wrote. She shrugged and said, she's not going to like it. 15 minutes later, Bethany blocked both of us on everything. We didn't go to my dad's birthday party, but Bethany did. And she didn't come quietly. She showed up in a white jumpsuit that looked suspiciously close to bridal wear. Cousin Kara texted us a photo with a caption, she's not okay. Apparently, she brought some real estate guy she met 2 weeks prior and told half the guests they were moving in together soon. The other half, she told big things are coming. She kept saying it over and over, big things. That Monday, we found out what the big thing was. Bethany launched a podcast. The title, Bloodline Bruises Growing Up with the Golden Child. The teaser trailer dropped on Instagram and TikTok. In the voiceover, she said things like, I thought family meant safety. And sometimes the most toxic people are the ones you share a last name with. It was so theatrical it felt scripted. But she wasn't done. At the end of the video, she thanked a sponsor, a therapy app, the exact one I'd introduced her to a year earlier when she called me from the bathroom of a bar crying about a panic attack. She'd signed a real deal. They reposted her video. She got over 10,000 views in 24 hours. People in the comments were eating it up, calling her brave, asking for advice, telling her they related. I didn't care about the podcast itself, but something about it made me feel unsettled, like I was being slowly written into someone else's fiction. Then came the twist I never saw coming. She emailed me. Subject line, let's talk. The body was short. I'd like to meet. No drama, just a conversation. I have things I want to tell you. I think you'll be proud of me. No accusations, no name calling, just calm, perfectly composed wording. It didn't feel like her at all. Emily read it twice and said, she's not trying to fix anything. She's setting a trap. I replied with one line, Emily will be there too. She never wrote back, but I had a feeling this wasn't over, and I was right. 3 days after the email, my parents showed up at our apartment. No call, no warning, just rang the bell at 7:15 p.m. while Emily and I were eating dinner. I opened the door halfway, didn't say anything. My dad gave a little wave like this was just a friendly visit. My mom had her purse slung over her shoulder like she'd been planning to stay. She said, we just want to talk calmly. I told them they had 3 minutes. They walked in anyway. Emily stayed in the kitchen, arms crossed, not speaking. She wasn't going to do the fake smile thing. She didn't need to. Everyone knew where she stood. My mom went first. She said Bethany was going through a transformative period and had made mistakes she regrets deeply. She said the podcast was just her way of processing things, that I shouldn't take it so personally. Then my dad added, she wants a relationship with you. She just doesn't know how to say it. I asked if Bethany had actually said any of that or if they were just hoping I'd fall for it. They didn't answer. Then my mom said something that stopped everything. She moved back in with us temporarily, just until she figures things out. Emily let out a breath loud enough for the room to hear it. So now the picture was complete. They'd paid her tuition. They let her move back in. And they were here now not to ask me for anything, but to make sure I didn't make things harder for her. They weren't mediating, they were managing. I asked them flat out if they'd ever told her what she did at the wedding was wrong. My mom said she was overwhelmed. My dad said she didn't mean to ruin it. I asked again, did either of you tell her it was wrong? They didn't speak. That told me everything. They weren't angry at her. They were embarrassed. And the easiest way to make the embarrassment go away was to push it on to me. I told them I was done with the money, with the guilt, with the games, that if they wanted to keep funding her life, they could, but it wouldn't come from me anymore. I said they'd done a great job raising a daughter who believes consequences don't exist. Then I asked them to leave. They hesitated, but they left. Bethany didn't contact me after that, but her podcast kept going. Episode 2 was about narcissistic siblings. Episode 3 was titled When They Make You Look Crazy. Emily and I laughed at that one. A few days later, I checked the lease on our apartment. We had 8 months left. I looked at our savings, ran the numbers, and told Emily we should take a trip. Something far, something warm, something that didn't have anything to do with any of this. She smiled. The next morning, we booked 2 round-trip flights to the Maldives. We were leaving in 6 weeks. No family, no drama, just peace. The kind of peace that finally feels earned. The last message I got from Bethany came 2 days before our flight. Just a fire emoji. No words, no context. Like she was trying to send some vague warning, or maybe just remind me she was still watching. I showed Emily while we were picking up luggage tags. She didn't even react. Scanned her boarding pass and said, "Perfect. Let it burn." I blocked the number. That was the last loose thread leading up to the trip. There was silence from everyone else, too. My dad didn't call. My mom sent one generic "hope you're well" text that I ignored. There were no more lectures, no more guilt trips. I think they finally realized I wasn't going to be the one to fix what they broke. Not this time. We left for the Maldives on a Thursday morning. No layovers, no rush. I watched Emily sleep against the window as we crossed over miles of open water. And for the first time in years, my brain didn't feel like it was on fire. No calculations, no financial plans, no rescue missions, just quiet. Our bungalow was over the water, literally. You could hear the ocean underneath the floorboards. They had a sign posted inside, "No clocks, let time be yours again." That hit harder than it should have. We didn't talk about Bethany, not even once, not until day 4. We were having breakfast on the deck, just the sound of waves and birds when Emily said, "Do you think they'll ever admit it?" I didn't have to ask who she meant. "No," I said, "but I think they know." And I really believe they do. Not in a conscious, reflective way, but in that uncomfortable silence that creeps in when your favorite scapegoat walks out the door for good. They know I was always the one cleaning up her messes. They know they let it happen because it was easier than telling her no. And they definitely know now that they can't reach for me like that anymore. Bethany stayed with them. She didn't find a new apartment. Her lease expired quietly, and the building relisted the unit without a problem. I know because the management company contacted me for final signature confirmation. She never reached out about it, never said thank you, never said sorry. She never will, but I stopped waiting for that. I don't need the apology. I just needed it to end. The podcast kept going for another 2 episodes. One was about being erased by your support system. Another about financial abuse inside families. I didn't listen. But Kara did. She said Bethany was stretching the truth so hard it stopped making sense. People stopped engaging. Comments slowed. Sponsorship vanished. After that, nothing. The silence wasn't just digital. It bled into real life. I stopped checking her socials. My mom stopped sending passive-aggressive group texts. My dad didn't mention her the one time he called to ask about a mechanic. Eventually, Kara told me that Bethany enrolled for part-time classes again, using my parents' money this time. Apparently, they dipped into a rainy day fund they'd kept for emergencies. I almost laughed. Turns out they had it all along. They just didn't want to use it, not until I refused to. Emily and I came home to a different version of life. We moved into a better place, further from the city, closer to the quiet. No more buzzing phones, no more split payments, just us. I got a new credit card, left my cosigner days behind. I even changed the password on my bank account for the first time in 6 years. No more surprise withdrawals, no more Venmo requests labeled "please don't ask." We don't talk about the wedding anymore. We don't need to. It's just a weird blip in a story that no longer belongs to us. Some nights we sit on our new porch with wine and watch the neighbor's dog chase moths under the porch light. We talk about actual things, books, trips, ideas, the business. Emily's planning real things. That old life, it doesn't even feel like mine anymore. It's something I watched happen, something I closed the book on. Sometimes fire doesn't need to be fought. Sometimes you just let it burn itself out and walk away, finally warm.